Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Lore Report. Here's your hosts, Sky, Wonderland, and myself, Caleb. We're excited to bring you our first ever podcast, a weekly installment talking about the newest things happening in Lorcana, talking about pro competitions, new cards, gaming, everything in between, and we're really excited to bring this to you guys. And, today we're going to start with, just something little that happened recently. The DLC Seattle, the last of the 5 DLCs for Disney Lorcana, and it was a pretty good time. But I'm gonna set it off recently. Recently
it's like
enough within a month. Rather late than never, you should say. The idea of our podcast was birthed there, so I think we have to start with the inception of where it was conceived, and we'll move on to Luke, who had I think a pretty good time in Seattle. Or Wonderland. Yeah, Wonderland. How was your time in Seattle, huh?
It's pretty good. Got to see some people. Got a Mickey. Got a cued. It was good. It was the dream, right? I
just won the whole thing. So nonchalant, so chill about it. I love it.
It's like what's everyone wants, right?
It was great because I ran into you in my second connecting flight, and I was like, oh hey. It's Luke.
Yeah.
And then we got to ride the monorail in together and find the convention center. And we walked around too far and then circled back in. It was a great time.
And had to walk through what felt like 3,000 high school students at some job fair.
Oh yeah, we were at the convention center is so big. We went to the wrong one. Yes. I forgot it was PTSD for me just walking through a ton of high school kids be like, move out the way, guys. Pardon me, excuse me. I had to put the teacher voice on. That was hilarious.
Yes. You're like using your teacher skills, and I'm just using like multiple big public event skills, or I'm just like, whatever, I'm just walking through. I don't care.
This tunnel vision to where you need to go. At Seattle, I played Red Blue. I worked with, I got to play a couple practice games with Sean Brandt, who ended up, he made day 2 and got top 32. And this is my first competitive TCG, which will kind of hop in. I'll ask you guys about your experience and background as we move on besides Seattle. But this is my first really TCG in general. And that was my first kind of big tournament besides playing at Set Champs. And that's where I met these guys. And this kind of formed. I went 5-1-3, which was really solid. I got the feature match. Yeah, I got the feature match the round before and had a horrible misplay. If I wouldn't, it might have had a chance.
Oh no.
I completely tilted. I know. Well, it's okay. I completely tilted. I won the first game, and since I lost one game, I had to get to 6 wins to get in. He inked a Flynn Rider. He was playing red purple. Then played a Flynn Rider. I brawled it, and then he had a third Flynn Rider in hand, and I was like, okay, that's insane. So he gained a ton of lore. Honestly, if he would have just played all 3 instead of inking one, he would have just beat me much faster. It was pretty insane. As red blue, that's one thing that and I missed ramp turn 2, so it was pretty tough. When you do that, it's that's a recipe for disaster. So. But no, it was a lot of fun. Getting to play on the stream was really cool, and again, getting to see and meet everybody that you watch and everything, and was a lot of fun. Getting to play some good people and then actually the day 2, since I didn't make it, I got to play in a 600 person 8-round constructed, and then I got top 32 in that too. So that was pretty cool. A good 2-day tournament result of getting top 1 point away from bubbling in. I got let it go, so that was pretty cool. Got 80th place, and then.
Nice.
Got that top 32. I actually lost the first round too. I ran into a hyper aggro round 1. I ran into purple yellow, and he had the bosses on a roll, and with that found 3 gaining knowledge and wisdoms. That's
pretty good.
I was gonna shift Sisu and win the game, and then he went knowledge, and I lost. So it was pretty wild. So. That's how it goes sometimes.
He was on a roll.
He was. The boss was really on a roll.
talked about Fishbone Quills.
Some things relevant, some things probably not. But yeah, we were talking about Fishbone Quill and people dropping it from Red Blue.
I'll be honest. That's a great topic. I talk about that. I only played it once in all of Seattle. I ran it for
really. That's actually kind of mind blowing.
I think I only played it once where I needed to. Honestly, in the mirror match, you don't really need it. When I played, I think I played 4 red blue mirrors, and again, really the scary thing to do, or really what I saw a lot of people do, is just over ink, and you really don't need Fishbone Quill. Actually, you just feel good just inking it, as long as you hit turn 2 ramp. Really, it's only if it's the panic button where I didn't see TPO or I didn't see one jump, and I need to keep up on ramp. But otherwise, as long as I hit the 1 ramp, everything else is just kind of set up on curve where, I really didn't feel I guess going second, it can be okay, or you can kind of catch up. But again, I think the thing that I saw most common was people felt like they needed to play Fishbone Quill and then use it every turn. And honestly, there's plenty of times in red blue where you can just not even once you kind of get up to where you need to, you don't even need to ink. There's plenty of times where you don't need to.
Right. It's like in the mirror, if they play Flaversham, obviously that deck has every answer to Flaversham, so you can't reasonably expect it to live. So,
oh yeah, you'll lose.
You don't want to get rid of too much of your hand. You're a big control deck that has plenty of draw, but if they have the answer to Flaversham every turn, you don't find a second one. You can't just be dropping your whole hand. You're gonna have to hold on to some stuff.
Exactly. And
honestly, how many copies of How Far I'll Go did you play then?
2.
Just 2, okay.
Yeah. And that honestly, that when you could sing it with, if you could go Tala, the last format, go Tala, and then sing that, that was great.
Yeah, if you sing that, you definitely don't. If you ramp on 2, then sing How Far I'll Go on turn 4, then you definitely don't need Quill in almost any matchup. But
yeah, I really
it can be tough if you're only playing 2 to do that pretty frequently. That's why I like playing 3 or 4. It always feels nice just reasonably expecting that in the matchups where you want it.
Yeah, honestly, I think I probably would have switched that to. I probably would have switched it probably to 3. How Far I'll Go is just. I don't think I could go to 4.
It does increase the amount of cards that Ursula 2 gets to hit from you, though. That's the downside.
That's true, and it's uninkable.
That's why it used to be a 4 of, but then when the Emerald deck started seeing more play, it cut back quite a bit because you just couldn't afford those to get hit.
And now with Sell the Azurite, I don't even have to worry about my 1 jump getting sniped, which is really nice.
Yeah,
are they even playing it? I think it's just, isn't it now just Sail and Tipo?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Now I don't have to worry about the Ursula 2 sniping my ramp.
Yeah, which then allows you to play a little bit, instead of playing 3 or 2 1 jumps, you can just play a couple more How Far I'll Goes now and play 3 or 4 of those and 2 B preps. So you're playing 5, 6 targets for Ursula 2 becomes not nearly as good of a card, especially because you're not going to necessarily hold those in your starting hand against an Emerald deck. And that's an interesting thing. I know that neither of you really played the Ursula 2 decks, but maybe you had experiences where you initially don't keep a card in your hand because they'll take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they evolve to knowing that, and they don't play it on curve anymore. They try not to play Ursula 2 on curve. They try to wait to play Ursula 2 on 4 or 5 or something. So then do you start keeping the How Far I'll Goes, knowing that they're not going to play it on turn 2, and maybe you could play it on turn 3 or 4 and get away with it?
So in my experience with this type of niche scenario, it's not really niche. I guess it happens every time you mulligan against green decks, but playing blue steel, it was always swords, right? Swords is great in every format pretty much to threaten to sing. But if it gets ripped, it's awful because it's just, you might not even see it for the rest of the game. But I always just didn't want to risk it. Green was a good enough matchup all around that you didn't have to keep a swords to feel reasonable going first or second. So it was I just threw it away and wanted to see it later. The worst case scenario is they do something crazy, they rip it, and then you I don't know, you find another one, they somehow find another Ursula and they rip both. I'm probably not going to have one, so. Bare Necessities is way more targets, but
more people playing Let It Go now, it seems, though. Do you think you'll join on that with your wheelless version of?
Nah, I don't. there's been times where I've like maybe we can sneak one, let it go, and like, but you just don't play enough singers usually, and it's also just a card economy thing. Like I'm already cutting down to 2 Hades versus like 3 from last set to this set, or from set 4 to set 5, and probably going to set 6 it'll stay at 2 Hades. But yeah, running Let It Go just feels bad when you're not playing wheel. Playing wheel is fine because you commit much more to having singers down, but you only play like 3 cogs worth. You don't play any beasts anymore. You're not playing like hardly any 5-cost singers that'll stick around. So there's no real reason to play in non-wheel. But you need to play like 2 at least in wheel, I think. Because if you're not playing
Or
Hades,
Beast.
then
Yeah, you have to have some
an
answer for
answer to
Tamatoa.
Tamatoa. Yeah, it's definitely necessary. But like bare necessities, you can snipe their quill and just like end the matchup on turn 2 or something. That seems pretty nice.
Sometimes
That feels really good
they
against
always have
wheel.
2.
Yeah.
Play Cindy, sing a bare necessities, rip their quill. They miss ramp.
Yeah, it's really nice. Then you just
My
gotta flip the
opponents
board.
just have the one of sword or cannons to hit your 1-drop.
Yeah, it can hit cannons. It can hit 1 jump ahead. There's like plenty of stuff that you're probably gonna hit something with bare necessities.
Steel Songs
Even
doesn't play
popsicle. If they
cannons
didn't
though,
play
does
their
it?
popsicle. What?
I said Amber Steel wouldn't play cannons though, would it?
No.
Well, no, it
No.
hits the
But-
cannons.
Oh yeah.
But I was mostly making a joke about how Sky hit my queen with a Fire the Cannons in a DLC in the win and then, well, the win and
then I
maybe in
failed.
the next round.
I got 0-2'd last round of my winning in, and I didn't get to let it go.
That's awful.
Heartbreaks. But you queued at the next one, right? Or were you already queued?
That was Texas, right? Yeah, I was already qualified. Chicago was the one where I did well.
So you broke my dreams at the time. But who knows? Maybe that was what gave me whatever I needed to get lucky to win Seattle, right?
That was the juice.
No, it was just all the practice from more bacon and eggs, playing
Mm.
endless
I
blue
didn't play
steel
against Blue Steel.
matchups.
I didn't play against Blue Steel at all.
Matchups don't matter. You just got to play against.
Oh yeah,
You got to play good games, Lorcana. That's all
the
that
reps.
matters.
I mean, to be fair, I did play traditional green steel, I think, a few times against you. And like that's one of the few times I played it. I mean, that and once or twice on stream. I probably got like 50 games in with the deck before Seattle. I mean, I had a bunch of games with the dock variation, which honestly I think helped a lot because I played with the Babooms beforehand, right? So I already knew exactly when and what I wanted the Babooms for, and when I just need to ink it right away. And like even in the matchups where you normally ink it, sometimes you keep it. Like not everyone realizes that like, oh, you need you keep this Baboom so you can hit Tipo so your 1-drop gets in. Like that didn't matter too much in this list, but like with the dock one it mattered. So at least it was like, okay, I don't need this, I can do this, mold this here. So some iterations, but I digress.
Yeah, you've played a lot of green steel though, like in the past. I remember you were pretty big on the deck for a while. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken with Steel Song, but I don't know. You just play a lot of Lorcana, so I'm sure you played both.
I play a lot of Steel. I play a lot of Steel,
except Blue Steel, because that's my thing here. So
don't take my spot.
our locals are only big enough
have
for one Blue Steel player.
Well, there's 2. That's
I mean,
the problem.
I might have 10%.
the other one?
One wheel and one no wheel. Steven.
Oh, Steven. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have 5% of the amount of games you've played on Blue Steel. You've played a lot, maybe not even 5%. I don't know. I have like a couple hundred games of Blue Steel.
How many times do you play other decks besides Blue Steel? That's the real question. Do you ever play games that aren't?
I don't
played
play
against him with
that many
non-Blue Steel.
Lorcana games in general anymore. Since
But
the
you
days of
did.
Pixelborn are long gone now. But I did, yeah. Back in the day when I actually did play Pixelborn, I did play a lot more other decks. Not a ton, but I like to actually brew stuff because we had Pixelborn. But now I just don't play at all anything else because what's the point? Let's be honest. I'm going to show up with Blue Steel most of the time. So my limited amount of time that I devote to Lorcana now,
it's actually kind of interesting
put it to
that
Blue Steel.
Initially people blamed Pixelborn for like solving the meta, and it could be its fault. But
I mean, there was like 2 sets. How hard could it be to solve?
Yeah, it was gonna get broken.
There just wasn't tournaments
now,
in paper, so.
But now, without Pixelborn, I feel the meta is going to take forever to like find new decks.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to go out and buy a brand new deck to try a new archetype out? You know, like when half the cards are new cards, like you have to buy all this stuff just to test it. With Pixelborn, if I had a thought, I could input it, play like 10 games, and then be like, oh no, this is terrible. I'm so glad like I didn't do this. So in regards, it's like, yeah, I'm a skilled player. I basically already know the outcome of a lot of these decks, right? But I do learn things from them. I'll find a card that'll be like, wow, this card was just like so much better than I had any idea it would be, right? Like maybe I could try to put it in these other decks now. And like I don't get to experience that without that digital client. And that's like obviously, I'm not being like bring back Pixelborn. I mean, that would be neat and all, but like that's definitely not happening. I just hope an official client comes sooner than later.
That'd be really nice. It's same. It's really hard to get in games now that that's not a thing because, just the hectic schedule that it was easy to log on and play for 45 minutes, but getting out to a league and devoting 3 hours of time is or 2.5 hours is a lot bigger commitment. So I can't wait for the days it's back. Luckily, I still think that as the new player, that learning a lot and even just watching videos, as long as you're actively participating in the thoughts, looking at their cards and hands, and like thinking of what you can do, I still think just because like you can still learn a lot and glean a lot from that information, really, because that's what I've had to do, I guess. And luckily, like I think listening to the podcast and everything else, like just around watching other people play, as long as you're like just not consuming the content, but trying to like take some information away, can still be good.
My brain doesn't learn that way as well, sadly. Like I'm a trial by fire type of person, and that tends to lead to like I have to do to learn.
Yeah.
So like I'll do terrible plays. And it's just like, yeah, I want to see how this goes. This is testing. This is an interesting play pattern. I'm pretty sure it's terrible, but I want to see what it happens to. Like what happens when we do it. And
yeah, you can't do that nearly as well with League. Not even just from the volume, but like most leagues, there's some sort of stakes, even if it's pretty small. So like you don't want to say, okay, well, I know this is probably wrong, but I want to see where I end up in 3 turns. Like that doesn't happen nearly as often.
I won't do that.
And the only thing is, like, if
of course, it stops in dedicated play groups, but those are few and far between as far as now. I mean, it always is in card games. You can't really expect that to be the standard of how things are found out. Most groups, if they do find something out, it's going to be hidden until the big tournament where they debut it, and then by that time, the set's probably already, halfway done. So
yeah, I don't go to League to learn things necessarily. I go.
That's the problem, man. We got to change the landscape of local leagues.
See, that's the thing. It's like if I'm going, I know I only have these 3 games. I'm probably going to bring a competitive deck, even if I'm not going to run against it, just because it's like more for me to get the practice in. Rather, it is. I'm probably not going to bring the fun pirate deck. I'm probably going to bring something.
I'll
I need to sit over that table experience.
But like, I'll try to play the pirate deck with someone between rounds, maybe.
Yeah.
But like lots of times it's like you play your games, you go use the restroom, you go outside, you say hi to someone or whatever, you go back inside and you play the next round. You don't have time. Like even if you don't use the bathroom or go outside or anything like that, there's not always enough time to play like more than a game, if even between the rounds.
Sure. There's always the problem with if you bring something that's like you kind of want to test the waters, and then you play against, you take it to a local league that's not super competitive, you get like false information almost. I almost like if I'm taking something kind of janky, I would almost just rather get my face, like smashed in by something just to know that I can just say, okay, this was bad. Like I'm done with this. But if it's like, we did some stuff, but he didn't have his optimal line or something like that, that's much worse for me because I just want to, move on to the next thing.
I guess I could see that. In my mind, it's like, well, if I lose to this deck that is also like a casual untuned deck, then I definitely am not going to win against like the competitive meta deck. So then I can abandon it.
Right.
Yeah, I think Sky's saying that maybe you probably could you find a way to squeak out a win, maybe when you shouldn't have.
Right. Somebody played a rabbit
so
when they could have played a castle, and then they gave you the
well, that's what I was saying.
there's
Is
a little
like,
bit less
it
tempo,
makes
so you could
sense.
do some funky stuff that normally wouldn't happen.
Take some
Because like
crazy
if you
line.
win, you still have to play more games.
There are so many games where you can tell like something went wrong here. Like they should have been able to do something that like locked me out. Like I did not do what I wanted to do, and I still ended up on top. I think you get a lot of those games in local leagues, which is fine. But if you don't have Pixelborn to grind out games with your jank, you need to do something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, hopefully a client comes. Sooner rather than later, or just because also the speed of like, oh man, you could play a game, and you'll be able to play a game of Pixelborn online or whatever they title it.
Yeah, shout out to Zepha, an old Pixelborn head who actually for his like whole career he was a poker player, and he would always tell me how, oh, you don't play poker in person because you can't run nearly as many tables. You got to multi-table online. And so he would be multi-tabling like 10, 15, 20 different tables at once. And he's like, yeah, Pixelborn's like that versus like playing in paper. I don't need to play in paper because like you can just jam 5 games in the time if I play one. You don't have to shuffle, don't have to buy the cards, don't have to go, talk to somebody, shake their hand. You can just get so much more data quickly. And it's also a thing where the people, like you can play against the people that are at the top of the ladder.
Oh yeah.
So which is very helpful.
Yeah.
So that is one downside of Pixelborn though, actually. Was that it did take some people who would just not go to locals then.
That's fair.
And like
right, people that were
I stopped going
competitively
too.
into the game and they didn't go.
But I honestly, one of the main reasons I stopped going to locals for a while was like some people had complained that I was like too competitive. Like they had complained that I was playing like net decks, and they're like, "Why'd you da-da-da?" And I'm like, "Bro, I made this deck. Like,
that's
not my fault that people copy
complaint.
my deck." Like,
but Wonderland haters at locals.
Yeah, dude,
I don't think I went to locals at that time, but
I mean, and those same locals actually now like playing against me, and they like want to play against, like they wanted to test against me, and they've tried to go out and they've dabbled their fingers and toes in some DLCs, to do that. But it is interesting how like that can change over time, and it might have been that Pixelborn left. I don't know.
One top cut at a store championship, and they're hooked. All of a sudden, they're like, "Yeah, come back and play me. I want your tier 1 deck always."
It's great. Yeah, you gotta
They saw us winning all the. They saw Sky and I winning all of the Rockstar Stitches with JT and Jim, and they're like, "Oh, I want a Rockstar Stitch."
It's great.
So we'll get Rockstar Stitch next set. Scar's okay. But at least the mat's cool. I like the art of the card, so the mat will be cool. But I mean. Cards.
I have so many mats.
Don't flex too hard.
That's great. Well, in general, not just expensive ones.
Bust them all out and put them over your shoulder.
I just meant like, in general, playmats to use. I have like 50, but you only need one. That's the problem. It's just like it's
frame them all. Or make a blanket out of them, or a quilt.
Make a blanket.
A rubber blanket.
One side is really uncomfortable.
Great. No, you do like two ply, so you have
2 ply mats.
The outside face is always the design.
Speaking of which, I really want them to the Lorcana, like the DLC mats that they have with the 2 people. I want them to release that, like the big one. Like the cool, like
the official, like
the official, like
one.
Competitive one. Yeah, that'd be sick.
Yeah, people would for sure eat that up.
I think you can special order some table mats from some places. Like I think I've seen some of the Pokemon ones too. Yeah, those would be neat.
Really official?
I think
official.
I don't know if they're official ones though.
Oh, okay. They look official.
I know, like RMB and Humble have a Lab Rats one made up that's for the whole table for versus.
That's cool.
We never did that for Lore Bacon and Eggs.
We didn't. We just had. I'm cheap.
Man, yeah,
We just had the lore 20 ones, you know.
Speaking of like, so we said Genie's nuts and Lilo's overrated, and then Go-Go
Tamago.
we've also said Tamagogo is really good, and that Green Purple is now a contender. I played one game of it in the DLC, and like with Rourke and everything else, like for Blue, for Ruby Sapphire, it can be scary just because it can quest under you with Bonsai and everything else. I think it's definitely more scary this set. What other cards for? I think we've also kind of mentioned Sail the Azurite
Sail.
Sea. I think it's a auto include in blue red. What because it can't get sniped by the Ursulas. We said. What are some of the other cards that are on your radar? I think are going to be meta defining for set 6.
I think so. Just to finish off Green Purple, just because we talked about Genie and Go-Go, which are like the main two things for that deck. The one cost Diablo, I think, has been seen like almost all the lists I've seen are playing 4 of in Green Purple.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense. Like, it's not an
They
all
play
in
crab.
on. They play Crab.
Yeah. I think
It's an extra
pumps
target
it
for
up.
Crab is nice. But it's just like one of those cards where going first, you don't always want to play something like a Maleficent that just quests for 2 and dies. You're fine with just taking the one lore threat from that and just recycling and taking a card. It's much better than not playing a 1-drop in that style of deck. And obviously you have Merfolk, which is probably better in most starts, but I'm sure there's some matchups where you'd just rather have the extra card.
It's inkable.
And it's inkable. So
and like
not always do you want to extend into multiple, Merfolk, targets that are susceptible to Sisu, or Swords or Tinkerbell. It's nice to have something like Merfolk that's inkable. You're not locked into playing it past turn 1.
Your stuff kind of needs to just gain lore or draw cards, right? And the fact that it gets
it's
to
a 1-drop
both,
rabbit, kind of not quite as good, but
it's like, if they answer it before you get a quest with it, it replaces itself, and that's big.
It's just like you missed a 1-drop. It's fine, and they had to play something into it. So
I think it's better than Merfolk as well. I'd rather have the card in that style of deck than discard the card. I agree. I think it's definitely a must play. You can kind of see the foil price is pretty expensive on that card right now. It's like $8 or $9. So I think a lot of people are hopefully catching up to that because
it's always the purple cards, man. Fox is still probably like $25.
It was like $35 around the DLC. I remember.
No way.
Yeah,
that's a yikes.
Yeah, and so is the rabbit. They're down right now because it's only Continentals. So, but only. Well, I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is it's an exclusive club, so not that many people are partying.
All right, what else is good? Luke, you got something that's you think has potential this set?
I mean, I don't think there's a lot this set, but I think the Maui Shark is kind of is the main reason why the Ruby Sapphire deck has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why Let It Go seeing a little bit more play, because you could just play like one of, and then Sailor's only playing 1 dime in his list. And then he's basically running Pirate's Life as an inkable dime. Because just as dime is it doesn't matter if it gets discarded, Tamatoa buys it back, the Maui buys it back, right? And then if you can play it and gain 3 lore off of that with the Maui Shark in play, is pretty solid. And it does seem like a little crazy, but at the same time with Vitalosphere now, it's just are they not going, even in weird, the Mirror, are they not going to quest with their Flavershams? They're still going to do that, right? They still are going to quest with their Sisus. So a surprise Maui Shark with a Vitalosphere, that's only 8 ink to buy back a B prep or a tutor while also answering something. So it's card advantage. So I think it's a reasonable card that was a little over. People didn't like it, then they liked it, then they didn't like it, then they like it. And I think currently it's in favor. I think Sailor's on 3, and DKP I think he's also playing 1 or 2 of them, right?
I haven't seen that list. I've seen Sailors, and I think it's 3. And yeah, all the different songs that you get to play with it is pretty wild. I really do like the Pirate's Life again because you get to sing it, and then you get to gain the extra lore off the shark too. It's pretty wild. Going to 1 dime is interesting.
I think that change makes sense paired with the change from Fishbone Quill. So obviously Tamatoa is a lot less strong if you're not playing Fishbone Quill, not just from less items, but from the curve. If you're going like a curve of, you play your 2-drop ramp, you play your Toddler or Flavershim, and let's say you sing a How Far I'll Go, then you're at 6. Then you can play Maui. You already have, How Far I'll Go in your discard. You're much lower to the ground versus playing like a Quill and going into like a Tamatoa on 5 or something like that. So I think that change definitely makes sense with going more of like a, Maui Shark, a little bit more mid-rangey, I would say, build. You're not playing quite as heavy into just mega Tamatoa and dime.
Yeah. I think the format might be getting faster.
It definitely is.
Yeah, right. And so that could be a nod to it, where it's just like, if this Emerald Amethyst thing is real, and all of a sudden now Go-Go is going to punish you for trading, like, your Maui lived? Haha, well, I'll gain 4 off of it.
Yeah.
I'll teach you a lesson for killing my fox, or for banishing my fox. So also, like, Go-Go is basically Rapunzel, right? It's a reversed Rapunzel trap.
Yeah, instead of cards, it's lore.
Yeah, and so until people start playing around that, that's gonna win some games. It's gonna do some stuff, right?
I think
I didn't really think of it that way as much at first, but then just watching it play a little bit in the LCCC. Yeah.
Right. So Fox Go-Go, that's 7, right? And that's like, if they quest with Rapunzel, you Fox Go-Go, that's actually a very not only achievable ink like cap out for green purple, but it's very reasonable that at that state of the game, like, they have to quest with Rapunzel to just not get, lose the race. So that's one of those bad spots.
And you just top deck into that
opponent, right?
You could just have the Go-Go in play from curve or earlier in, and then so you just have to, no cards in hand, you draw Fox, bounce the Go-Go, replay it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if what feels worse, that or if they just play in the mind game of, well, did they have it?
Oh yeah, right.
Then they don't have it, and you didn't quest, and you lost because you got outclocked or something. And those situations are like some of the worst to have to play against. Like,
that
especially
makes Maui really bad. You're now like, I've been trying to look for ways to cut Maui from red blue because I think it's only okay in certain spots, but that's making a real strong case for, like, Maui might not make it. He might be like,
oh please,
two max.
If only.
I think a lot of people are trying to cut Maui. Yeah, I've seen him go down to 2.
Yeah, because Sailor's on 2 right now.
List.
Can Go-Go hit ward characters?
Yeah, I don't think you can pick a warded character, but I don't think that really matters too much. What warded characters are you?
Alice.
Cogsworth, is it basically? Maybe Alice.
Yeah.
Have you tried that at all? Any of the Alice Blue Steel stuff? Do you think it has any? I think the card's cool. That's the only reason.
I think the card is cool too. I think it does open up to a different archetype of blue steel.
It's just a sprinkle, though.
Well, I think if you have to go all in, I don't think it's
no. I mean,
for like red blue.
No.
There's just not enough.
That's just a sprinkle of a card.
Oh,
like how they sprinkle cards. Like,
right.
There's not enough.
But I do think there's a decently strong blue steel mid range package right now. You have stuff like Smee is like an insane 2-drop. Like, so if you go like Smee on 2, Alice on 3, Pluto on 4 into like Cogsworth, that's great. But it's not great into the meta, which is the problem, right? When stuff like B Prep, Sisu, that's all pretty bad into. So I think it's strong. It's a very strong line on par with most creature decks, but it's not good into the meta. So that's the main problem. Yeah, you need to fit card draw in there if you're gonna have any chance against like B Prep decks or Sisu.
Yeah. Man, the card's cool.
It is very cool, yeah. Especially if you hit the Pluto to protect it, because then you're just like probably winning the game with your 2-drop, just questing
Yeah.
Eastern or Smee.
That's another again great card for the new set.
Pluto.
Yeah, Pluto's a great one. Is it 5 cost?
It's
Yeah.
4
4.
Oh,
cost.
4
That's
cost
why it's
5
good.
5. Well, 4 cost 1 5 and or 0 5 and if no damage 5 5. Quest for 2. Inkable.
Yeah, Steel Song, man. Protect the Ariel or the Gaston.
Really good. Is that an automatic 4 of in every Amber Steel?
No.
No.
I would say no, but Luke
I
plays
think
much more Steel
it's.
Song than me.
I agree. I don't think it is. I think some lists are playing 2 of. It's definitely consideration. Like turn 3 aerial, turn 4 that seems very good. I wouldn't say you're a fool for running 4, but I would also not say I wouldn't say you're a fool for not running 4. So like I think it's kind of up in the air. I'm not fully opinionated on it.
Yeah,
So it
I
could be a
think
world
Zeus
that
is actually very good this set, like in theory.
yeah.
Do you think
So
with
like
Blue
if Zeus
Steel it's
gets played
pretty
as like a 2 or 3
unplayable though?
of,
I think Blue Steel Wheel definitely has. I would throw 1 in to
Yeah.
start, maybe go up to
But
2
for your
depending on what
list,
happens. But my list, I've thrown 1 Zeus in before, no wheel, and I think it's fine. It just depends on how bad the matchup. Like green purple is traditionally a pretty decent matchup, so you're not really worried about Genie too much. And probably Maui Shark, it's not super necessary in that matchup either.
and he's already really low on songs.
yeah,
I think you can fit it.
the green purple. It's always shows up at more on their in the EU DLCs.
Yeah, I think green and purple was much more actually brought to bigger tournaments the last couple sets than NA.
Yeah, I really
Which
didn't
is
see that.
probably well, so there's also interesting things to look at there, right? Because the meta adjusts for these events where it's like, oh, this last event this deck did well at, right? So there's an overcorrection to answer that type of archetype. And so a deck that like green purple that could be good for one event might not be good at the next one if the decks people are trying to build to fight the best deck are also good against Emerald Amethyst, whereas in like Emerald Steel is normally advantaged against Emerald Amethyst, so like
Yeah,
less people wanted to play it in Seattle right after Emerald Steel won. But then some people were like, oh no, I should play it because Emerald Steel won, more people will play Sapphire Ruby, so I'm going to counter it. So it kind of just depends on where people expect the meta to be and then what they decide to play. And I think the NA players just did not end up falling on the Emerald Amethyst like the EU players do.
I think that's the hardest part about DLCs. There's the what deck to play. I was
Matchup roulette.
yeah,
Always
Matt.
fun.
That's really hard. So yeah, I like we said, I think it's way more competitive this one, and I think has a lot more legs. I'm excited to see where it goes. Same with Amethyst Steel, which was solid and again had people, get into top 64s, make top cuts, this last season. So I'm excited to see what it can do in set 6, both of them.
Yeah, I'm excited too because I think it's the first time that green purple actually has a target on its back. I think at least for like the really competitive community, it sounds like to me that it's coming out as the front runners. This is the best deck right now. So this is the first time the deck is actually like a tier 1 deck that needs to be played around, and the meta might shape around it.
I think a lot of people are just not playing Emerald Steel right now. I think everyone's like,
people want to try new things. I mean, that's very like I said, if this is what people think is very good, so then people are going to go back to Emerald Steel and Steel Song.
That's what Steel Song was last when Naveen came out. Everybody was, really Amber Steel was really played a lot at the first DLC and a ton. So
Bucky
kind of underperformed.
Bucky was banned. Then we had Toronto. Then we had Prince Naveen. So like when the funny thing is like this current version of Emerald Steel could have been the best deck at Toronto, basically.
Sure.
But people didn't like tank into it that hard. Like it really took like Dale and then Zan playing it and figuring out the exact lists to do
Morph
to
shifts.
combat it. Yeah. Dale was
And
brilliant.
it's always an interesting thought that the strongest deck, just like if you were somehow able to quantify like raw power of a deck, isn't always the best deck to play because it's so meta dependent on what people bring. Like an example of this, like back in set 2, I think blue steel was like, in my opinion, the strongest deck by far into the meta, but there was a deck that completely demolished it. So if technically people are playing the best deck, blue steel, 35% of the time, there is a deck that exists that beats it, but nobody's playing it. So like, how does that refactor into the equation of what's the best deck? It's always like this evolving cycle. And so like right now, this looks very good on paper, but if people play green steel and it has a favorable matchup, it might not even be, it might seem like it's not worth all the hype at all, like in a month. But we'll see.
Yeah, I almost played Amber Steel, like aggressive beatdown with Whole New World, but like an aggressive Whole New World version, because I was just crushing everything. And part of the reason was because I could actually beat blue steel, and I had played more blue steel against more blue steel than the average player would. I wonder why. Nebraska has an insanely high blue steel player count.
Ridiculous.
2 Continental qualified players off of blue steel. And so it's always at all the events I play at. So I definitely have to skew my decks. I either play something that I'm like, please let me beat the people who beat Sky, or like let there be a deck that counters Sky and let me beat that deck, please.
I feel like the last 3 events though, you've played like stuff that was not good into me.
Oh yeah,
I know like the last one you played like Green Steel.
Yeah, Green Steel Dock. And the hope was that red blue, that Sapphire Ruby knocks you out, and then I crush them because I had a very good Ruby Sapphire matchup, but a very bad Sapphire Steel matchup.
I remember
nobody plays
Blue
Ruby Steel
too.
or Ruby Red Blue.
It was a nightmare.
I think the last set champs, it was literally like just me. There was like maybe 3 people that would show up with Red Blue. It'd be like
you and Sean and
someone,
some random person.
Yeah.
And you guys feasted on those Sapphire Steel players.
No, I didn't see him. I just ran into.
The matchup's not that bad. It's really not that bad.
I ran into Hyper Aggro.
If you play
that wasn't great.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit worse.
Yeah, it does make it. I'm a little worried because I think that it's a little bit better, but always at the beginning of the set, everybody's pushing Hyper Aggro, so it'll probably even out.
Nature's healing.
Yeah, like at the start of this set, we're seeing Artifacts, green, purple aggro everywhere.
Yeah.
Genie's the man. I will say, so going back to this Artifacts list that I pulled up here, 4 Elsa is interesting, and I think the other thing to write home about is Clarabelle. So Clarabelle he's running a 3-2 line. I don't know. The deck title says aggro, but to me, Clarabelle is like the anti-aggro card. I do understand that you can play much more aggressively and then have that threat of shifting to Clarabelle or just dropping a Clarabelle later in the game to come back if they just go super, okay, I board wipe you once and I have more cards than you. But to me, like that seems like a definite area that decks will branch off of and say, no, I'm not playing Clarabelle. I think most decks I haven't seen Clarabelle with for green purple.
Yeah, I think like you said, if it's gone to that point where you need a desperation Clarabelle, it's probably the game's probably over.
Right. I think
we also need to look with a grain of salt on every EU list because the EU Continentals
because they're awful
the like most of the people you test with online are EU players. Aren't they? Like all of you blue steel players. So they're gonna play something that they are known for, and then with 1 or 2 spice things. Like I'm like Artifacts might be all in on the Clarabelles, or they're just in there because he wanted to try them out.
That's fair.
He's not going to play them in Continentals.
Yeah, they do have to go first. I think that's a great point.
I wonder if you look at all the lists, you could tell that EU lists were much more like focused in on what they might want to take to Continentals versus like some of the NI guys might have went a little bit more experimental with what they brought. Get a feel for what's the meta is like and make a few changes. And
yeah, I think
so far it's still been playable, like very playable. So
I think that's really interesting. I think it's better to toss in cards one at a time. I don't know, maybe that's me just not being used to TCGs, but like I think it's easier to.
No, I think that makes sense. It's what's probably going to end up happening, right? Is only a few cards will actually be in the list. So
it depends on how many games you can play.
That's fair.
If you have less games to play, then you might have to drastically change 2 or 3 cards at a time, and then hope that you can tell if those cards had an impact. And because like sometimes one card
put
could
in
have
a bunch
such
of
terrible
jank
impact that it throws. Yeah.
So you might have one gem in there, but you got bogged down by the rest. Then you're kind of like, okay, this deck's not great.
It's hard to figure out. Yeah. We can talk more about the Continentals next week.
Man, there's so much great conversation for us to have, and like Wonderland said, just with all the different combinations and new cards, it's all just going to continue to evolve. The lore report is going to be a great spot for you to continue as we continue this conversation, to listen to us, make those changes hopefully in your deck, see what's working, what's not throughout the entire Lorcana universe. I'm really excited to take this journey with Luke and with Skies and with all of you. So we're just going to continue this conversation into set 6, and with all the exciting things, both of them going to be in Continentals to cover. Hopefully me sneaking to last chance qualifiers and sneaking in. But yeah, we appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time on the lore report. That is Skies Wonderland. I'm Caleb. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.